Now I have.
Okay. Okay. So I'll make this recording available for everybody. But again, welcome. And as I had started to say early on, it's a little bit bittersweet to know this is the last of this series, almost 2 years of monthly data science workshops. We're going to transition to a certificate course that David will describe in just a minute. In fact, I want to turn it over to him. I will mention a couple of things, though. We do have a YouTube channel that I put all the presentations in. I don't know if that was mentioned last month. I don't think so. So all the new videos are there. All the old workshops are there. So when Dave starts talking, I'll try to find that link and put it in the chat for you. Also on our website, there's a new tab called presentations. We're trying to put all of our presentations, be it a PDF or a PowerPoint converted to a PDF, there as well. There's some new ones there that you can check out. I want to mention, and Dave, you could be that you're a better person to do this, but I have created a Kaggle data competition using the heart disease so that when we teach the certificate, we're going to use that as one of the teaching options of having students continue to improve their data analytical experience by continuing to submit their answers to Kaggle and see if they can improve the score, be it AUC or F1 or whatever. But with that, Dave, I'm going to turn everything over to you.
Okay, can you see my screen? I'm sharing the screen right now.
Yes, I can.
Okay, real good. Yeah, to leverage what Bob said, yeah, about Kaggle. Yeah, between Bob and I, we're going to upload create dozens of private invitation-only Kaggle competitions. And the first one, Bob was testing to make sure we could do all the bells and whistles as a prototype and everything. And yes, we can do that. And that's going to be pretty exciting because we're going to move over to that as our learning platform. Why are we doing that? Well, after we finally finished the book, we got our life back a little bit. I've been experimenting on Kaggle on some of the competitions, and I'm pretty happy with, some of the results. It takes a lot of effort to get into them. And I thought it'd be a great idea to move our entire learning platform over to Kaggle and use that and let people compete against each other in the team, and then we're going to eventually share with each other. Okay, how'd you get that high on the leaderboard, our own personal leaderboard, and then we'll share, and then we'll make sure that everybody knows how to get to a top spot, including myself. I'll share and show you all the tips and tricks that I have up our sleeve that are basically all described in a book. But we're taking that, as you can see here in the slide here, we're trying to take that to a high performance, no code predictive modeling type of platform. And that's what our 3 certificate classes are going to focus on, and also for innovation on demand. So let me get into that a little bit before we start talking. And, when you look at what's the evolution of data science and the evolution of teamwork, trying to find, the best model. On the left, you see this picture. You could have internal data science teams that are working their best and everything. And, but the problem really is that they are a big fish in a small pond. And if you really want to test, how good you are and how good your techniques and strategies are, the Kaggle competition area is really quite good. First of all, it's humbling when you get in there. And then you say, okay, how do I deal with this? What's my strategy? And we've talked about this in our workshop so often that it's all about experimentation. So everything is a data science experiment when you're trying to do, your best models. And the best way to test that out is in the Kaggle competition. So what we want to do is we want to bounce between our private competitions, and then when we as a team say, hey, we think we got something here, then we'll go out, so-called in the wild, and then go to a real live, similar, Kaggle competition, see how we do there as a team, and then come back and practice back and forth the learning experiences. So I think that should be rather entertaining and interesting.
And Dave, if I could interject, for those of you who haven't been to Kaggle, 99.99% of it is coding competitions. But we found out that lo and behold, we can do it with Orange. So just understand this is a very much groundbreaking to do one and not do any, say, Python coding.
Yeah, at the end of a competition, at least most of them, they say, all right, what's the ID file? Whether that could be a patient or a person or whatever you're the ID number of whatever you're trying to predict. And then the next column is the predictive column. And then within 1 or 2 seconds, they will then calculate the accuracy because they know what you're trying to predict behind the scenes, the secret data set. And then they'll give you a score and they'll give you a placement on your leaderboard. So that's pretty exciting for those that, like a little drama and competition after they get depressed, maybe after their initial score. But the beauty again of Kaggle is you could upload typically as a default in the competition 5 predictions per day. And we're going to allow in our competitions 10 per day because we really want to have people learn how to be an experimenter. So let's take this one example here. You can see, we've talked about this so often in Orange. This is a super simple predictive model. You have a file where the data comes in on the left. You send it off to test and score to see how well it does. And you say, all right, I'm going to do logistic regression, nothing but logistic regression. So that's just one super simple model of what that looks like. But, what's wrong with that workflow? Well, it violates one of the major theorems in data science, which is the no free lunch theorem, which is basically telling us that, don't rely on your so-called favorite algorithm to always be, the best one when you're trying to predict something in a new data set or even a data set that has changed over time. So what we want to make sure is that people understand that what we've taught, in our workshops and through our book, and then obviously through the next certification classes, is there are no shortcuts whatsoever. And if you go in a Kaggle competition, you try to do shortcuts, you're going to be depressed pretty quickly. So if you look at this workflow here, I've gone from 1 algorithm to 7. So we're going a little bit beyond the basics. And if you look at the bottom left, I really love, I'm an experimenter. I'm a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. You say, well, how does that relate to data science? A lot of things, and especially that I also train people in design of experiments. It's the highest level of Lean Six Sigma technique that's out there, and it applies 100% to design of experiment, to data science experiments, predictive modeling. And if you look at this Thomas Edison quote, the real measure of success is the number of experiments that can be crowded into 24 hours. And I got to tell you, when you get into Kaggle competitions like I've waded into 4 of them at the same time, and you're trying to do a lot of experiments, it can get wild. And fortunately, in my office, I have 3 computers. They're all gaming computers, very fast. And when I'm in some of these competitions, I have some of these algorithms I'm testing overnight. It takes sometimes, 10 or 12 hours for them to test. And you might say, what the heck are you doing? Well, I'll show you in a minute. If you look in the right here, this is all the data science experiment space that we've talked about in all the workshops. We have the picture we're showing of the workflow just shows you the data algorithm experiments that could happen, but there's all kinds of other ones, feature engineering, EDA, you have hyperparameter settings, you have all kinds of pre-processing settings, you have data splitting options, you have cross-validation options, there's all kinds of experiments. When you add them all up in any kind of data set you're looking at, no matter how simple or complicated it is, you could get into billions of different combinations. So how can Orange actually thrive in that environment? Well, if you look at the next workflow I have here is, you can see here, well, I'm going to first show you this one. This one gets up to 23 different algorithms. So it's starting to get more and more. Now, if I go back here one, so have a look at any of the orange, you click on any one of the widgets for the algorithms. And if you look at what are all the different options there, this is just, for example, stochastic gradient descent algorithm. And if you look at where I have the white boxes there, you can see, well, I got 9 algorithm options here, I got 4 there, and I got 3 there. But just looking at the algorithm options, there's 108 experiments just for this one algorithm. And I haven't even touched the billions of potential HPO combinations that are available for the red boxes, which are all of the numerical settings. And that's just one algorithm. So there is an entire world of experimentation that's out there that is available for those that are really interested in high performance modeling. And if you look at this workflow, we've shown this, we've shared this workflow with a lot of you in one of our workshops a few months ago. All right, so this is moving up there. You know, this is showing you that we have, you know, a lot more algorithms in orange that we could add in competition with each other. And the beauty of orange, because it's based on Python and Python does this and our programming language does not do it, you could then go into the test and score widget and it'll show you a comparison of all these and show you how good they're doing. So guess what happens if I push it a little bit further? And I've done this on Kaggle competitions. I've done workflows for 120 different algorithm options to see which one is the best. Now, depending on your data set, this might take overnight to calculate. So it's good if you got multiple computers, so you're not doing something with your one computer. And the beauty of this is it might not give you the total bullseye of what you need to win a data competition, but it'll get you into the area. It'll say, all right, this algorithm family with these high parameter settings are getting you into the area where that you're really performing much better than you thought you would, or in this data set you're looking at. And then we have here, I call this the Petrushkov-Hoyt no-code data science Kaggle experiment. This is our great experiment that we've been trying to do. I've been, you know, out there testing 4 different Kaggle competitions and seeing if we as non-coders can compete and place respectably. And the answer is yes. In Kaggle competitions, if you make it to the top percent, they actually call that, they call you in the gold area. I've made it into the gold area on 2 of the 4, and I've made it into the silver and bronze and the other ones, and it tells you, you know, what percent you're in. And so approaching this from no code is possible. And can you compete against the world of coders and still look respectable in the leaderboard? Yes. And I've only started to scratch the surface with those 4 competitions, and we're going to use a lot of those learnings in, you know, our classes. If you look at, it's interesting when you look at what's going on in the world of pursuit of high performance predictive modeling. I like to look at that because this is what it feels like when you're doing this. It feels like you're trying to crack a safe, and not just any kind of safe, but a really high state-of-the-art theft-proof vault. And when you open up, you crack one layer, you open it up, you don't find a final reward. That's all you find is another safe, another vault. And you have to crack that one to get further and further and further. It's like in the world of predictive analytics, you don't just all of a sudden find the best algorithm in the world and you never have to worry about improving it. No, this is a continual improvement effort because predictive models are never, ever 100% accurate. So you should always be experimenting and always trying to find out what is the best and ultimate predictive model that you're going to look at. But I want to show you here this one. This is the wildest workflow that I've used so far in one of these competitions. And this actually has 165 algorithm options mixed in with some high performance, hyperparameter optimizations that are all capable in orange. And I did this for a few reasons. You know, obviously I'm trying to find out all right, when I say, all right, Orange, start to analyze this, I gotta obviously walk away for a few hours, go for a bike ride, go to sleep, and the next morning it'll, you know, show me the results, and I could say, ah, okay, that's interesting. And then it's also very interesting that this, keep in mind that of all the science experiments, this is just the algorithmic experiments. If I want to test different types of data splits, 70-30, 80-20, or I want to test different cross-validation numbers like 2, 5, 10, or 20, I have to do that for each one of these to see as an experiment how it does. So this is just one layer of the experiments. But if you want to really be very competitive, you have to take, this level of detail and take it pretty seriously. So we talked about that. And one of the things we're also going to get into pretty heavily in our, certification classes is how do we deal with innovation on demand, problem solving on demand? How do we really leverage these chat bots with doing some really cool special stuff for us? And I'm in the middle right now of a competition with the two top innovation on demand scientists in the world, Boris Slotin and Ala Zusman. They're actually good friends of mine. They trained me in their techniques. And we're going to see exactly how much AI can leverage a certain competition, private competition that we've agreed upon, and we'll see exactly how far we can push it. So we are really in the wild world right now, where that we could do a lot of pretty wild things. We could go in Orange and try to blow it up with 165 algorithms. It'll not blow up. You could add 100 more. I've done that too. It will not blow up. As long as you have enough RAM on your computer, you could load up your workflows and your algorithmic data science experiments with Orange with no problem. The only question is your computer going to hang in there and continue on with that? So we think we're doing some pretty interesting things and as the next step of our book, but keep in mind that, everything we talk about in the book, all the different concepts and everything, you need to understand that. You need to understand data science before you can get into trying to do high performance data science. And the same data science concepts we cover are the same things that coders are going to learn. It doesn't matter if you're coding or non-coding. So I'll stop there. I could go on forever talking about that topic, but I will stop now. And then we're going to get back into we're going to go through chapter 5. And Bob, do you want to take it from there? I'm going to stop sharing. Bob, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. That you've got the first section at 5.4.9, but I just wanted to say for more details on the certificate course, we have a lot of information there about what you need to know. And we just added also a presentation like Dave just gave, so to speak, to give you more of an orientation. So please do consider the certificate course. It's at 3 levels. Which should appeal to you. We've already had some people sign up, and so that's there. So what we're going to do with the remaining time is finish up chapter 5. We probably will speed through some aspects and others we will slow down, but you have that up, Dave, or is that convenient? I mean, I can go ahead to my section if need be.
Just a section. Pull up a second up here. Pull up that section. That's starting with 549 residual plotting.
Right.
Just a second here. Let me get the screen share going on that.
So you're going to do that and the one on rank 5.51.
Yes.
While you're doing there, there's a question in the chat. Do you plan to hold a certificate course later in the year as well? When do you think it'll recycle, Dave?
Probably every 3 months. Yeah, I'm having, believe it or not, I'm having trouble finding my, okay, where's my Zoom controls here have disappeared.
When does the first certificate course start?
On the 12th of January. Bob, do me a favor. Can you start your section? I have here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a missing in action.
Understand that there
Zoom
needs
link.
to be a term for, Zoomitis or whatever, whatever malady you're going to call it, that it's a new world out there when you're having to do Zoom for everything. And actually, so I'm seeing a mini. I'm not sure. Are you seeing my desktop perhaps?
Yes.
Okay. So let me pull up. Okay, so let me go up here, get rid of the visual. So I'm going to be going over 552. Bear with me a second here. This is all an attempt, there's two things that I'm going to present. It's all an attempt to say what's important, what features are important. You've already looked at rank, and David's going to go over rank, which is probably the most common or popular, but I really like permutation feature importance. It really, in essence, tells you what features are important, and it does it by sort of subtracting them and see what happens to the model. However, it's not really subtracting. The word permutation means shuffling. So let's say in a data set to predict heart disease, you want to know if cholesterol, how important it is. Well, what if you juggle the features in cholesterol, you change the values and whatnot, and the model does not change at all. The performance, the AUC does not change. It must not be very important. Whereas let's say you take the results of the treadmill test and you shuffle the results, and suddenly your AUC goes from 0.85 to 0.55, you know that that treadmill test was super important. So I just want to raise that. It's a simple test. I really like it, though. It's easy to explain. It can be used for classification and regression, which makes it valuable as well. So just to bring that up, I've highlighted things that kind of remind me to mention to you that you can do that along with rank, but realize they may not give exactly the same results. Also, is for both of them, if you change algorithms, particularly the family, let's say you go from logistic regression to a tree-based like random forest, you're not going to get the same results. So when you report the results of either one of those, you have to say, this was based on this data set using this algorithm and any tuning you did of that algorithm. So we'll go to the feature importance, and actually what I may do is, let me just see, bring up the actual, this, apologize for the complexity of this, but this is just the same workflow where you open up feature importance. Can you see the opened up widget?
Yes.
Good, okay. So notice on the left that I can change it. AUC, I think, is what's in the book. But, so AUC, again, if you've got a balanced data set, it's probably the gold standard by and large. So you would use that for common classification. But you've got other choices. If it was imbalanced, you might go, well, let's look at F1 because that really averages out precision and recall. So you have all these to choose from, or Matthew's correlation coefficient. So I like the fact that you can choose, but this is so easy to visualize. Also, if you wanted to just isolate only these patients, watch, see it highlight. Now you connect that to a data table and you've basically just got those folks. And remember, just to refresh your memory, that terrible terms in here, major vessels colored. What it means is they did imaging of the coronary arteries, and you're looking for how many coronary arteries are calcified. 0 would be a fairly healthy heart. 4 would be very unhealthy. It's not a perfect correlation, but basically that's what it means. So anyway, you can certainly isolate those. So that is really what we mean by permutation feature importance. Easy to do, easy to interpret. So that's a classification. The regression workflow is virtually the same. And this is for the body fat one. Notice that the abdominal circumference is the gorilla in the room. That's really the most important in there, and that's what it really identified for you. Looking at R squared, you could look at root mean squared error, but R squared is kind of the gold standard there. All right, so the second thing I'm going to discuss is what about individual predictions? Let's say you want to know patient by patient what's going on. Well, let me skip over. The fact is how you connected this workflow is important, and that's why we have these different captions, 5.42 to 5.45. Just shows you how you connect them. But let's go to a live, let's see which one, a live one of the same thing that's in the book. This is the connections that I won't go over. That's explained for you. But let's go down to predictions, to the widget. First of all, at the bottom, you can actually see the score for everybody down here, just like the test and score. But how it's different is, let's pick this patient here that notice that the logistic regression predicted a 1, and it pretty well was 1. The amount of error was almost nothing. So this is a pretty pure prediction. So you might want to take this male 55-year-old man and just see more about him. He was asymptomatic, apparently, gives his blood pressure. He had a normal EKG at rest, no surprise. Notice his heart rate of 111. What that tells me is he quit on the stress test. He got chest pain, number 1, you see the 1 there, and he had 5.6 millimeters of ST depression. I'm sure the cardiologist or the technician went, that's enough. You can stop now. So how would you look at that? This is back basically Shap or Shapley in a very interpretable manner. In fact, David and I have not discussed this. He's going to discuss the standards Shap, but I think this is easier to interpret, in my opinion. So this happens to be on just one patient. When he looks at SHAP, it'll be on all patients. But regardless, I think this is easier to interpret. It just says if your major vessels are 0, there's no calcification, it's a strong point against heart disease. That's why it's blue. Strong point in favor of the heart disease was the ST depression. The chest pain asymptomatic, ironically, don't ask me why that's a strong predictor. The heart rate of 111 again suggests that he quit. And the thallium scan of his heart, reversible defects, fairly typical for heart disease. Because of the lack of blood supply, when you scan them, you'll see decreased uptake by the heart, the myocardium, and then later it'll go back to normal. So the point was, so that explain prediction, it does a nice job of, for a given patient, telling you what's important. I think it's very intuitive. Okay, Dave, you want to, that's my 2 sections. You want to take over?
Yeah, I'll talk about.
Let me stop share. Yeah.
Okay. Talk about residuals and ranks. And just a second here.
Yeah, not seeing you yet.
I have no idea why I'm having issues today. This is very interesting.
Well, if need be, I can bring them up and you can discuss them and I'll scroll for you or whatever, if that ends up being a problem.
You know what? Why don't you do that, Bob? Go to 549, please.
Okay. So going back up.
I have no idea why I got.
Well, you live and die by technology these days.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Teach with Zoom all the time, but this is somehow something's goofy going on here for me.
Okay, there we are, residual plots.
You're not sharing, Bob.
Whoops.
Okay, can you see Bob's screen?
No, but, and the reason, let me get my menu back. That's another thing that's frustrating is uh, my Zoom menu's gone. Let me hit this button. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. What it is, the reason I'm not seeing the Zoom share button is I didn't hit it. It's that simple. So let me go back. Apologize for that. All right, are you seeing it now?
Yes.
All right.
Okay,
So
I'll try to
residual
be.
plots. What in the world are residual plots? You know, when we're looking at predictive models, we're interested in two things. At the end of the day, first of all, let's say it's a regression model. We're interested in comparing the actual values, the ground truth, against the predicted values. And if you scroll down a little bit, Bob, so that it's viewable to see 528, you could see there that typically on a residual plot, you have a 45 degree line. It starts from the bottom left and goes to the top right. And that's the perfect prediction. That line represents when the actual data represents your prediction. And that would mean that you have a perfect prediction. If you have a perfect prediction, that'll happen at times. What does that mean? That means that your data is structured wrong. That means that you have some data leakage. And Bob and I have seen that, for example, when glucose values are added for diabetes. Oh, we get almost a perfect, almost a perfect prediction. Well, you're leaking, you know, the real data into the model, and it's acting a lot smarter than it is. So you got to watch out for that, because if you get an incredibly, you know, accurate model, it's not like, oh my gosh, I got to write an article and publish a paper real quick and get a spot on TV because I've just solved diabetes. No, that's usually not the case. The case is you have some data leakage or something else is going on, because you know, predicting the future and predicting, you know, anything is not going to be that kind to you. So we use these residual plots. There are some people in the literature that call this the most important plot that's out there to compare your actual model against the ground truth. And you can see on the right-hand side, figure 529, it's not looking too good. That's a model where that, you know, the ground truth is still there, that 45 degree line. That's exactly what it would look like if the predicted values equal the, you know, the actual values, but you're off in right field. It's totally overestimating the risk if it's, you know, in this case, a medical thing that you're looking at. So what you want to have is a plot that's as close as possible to the 45 degree angle. But again, that doesn't always happen like that. If you scroll down a little bit lower to figure 530, that's showing up on your screen right now, you could see that residual plots are also shown and plotted different ways. And this one is shown in JASP. We use that to supplement orange. And here it's not a 45 degree angle, but it is a horizontal line. And the horizontal line of 0 on the left, 0 on the right, is telling you, you know what, if you could match that line again, your predicted values and your actual values are perfectly in sync with each other. But in this type of graph, we could see all the black dots, the gray dots are scattered either above, which means that, you know, the predicted values are predicting too high, or if they're below the red line, it means that they're predicting values that are too low. But in any case, we could see that they're certainly, you know, off from the actual values. And we could see here that if they're standardized residuals, that it's within, you know, plus or minus 10, let's call it standardized residuals. And that might not be too bad, or might not be acceptable for your model. But so when you get a situation like that, the first thing you want to do is say, all right, have I really experimented with all my algorithms? Am I really trying to get it as best as I possibly can? And am I in the ballpark of doing something that's gonna, make sense for me. And if you scroll down a little bit further to figure 531, you could see this is a workflow in orange that we've created that, you do your predictive modeling. This is a, super simple example showing one linear regression algorithm trying to compare one data set. And then we use this scatter plot widget off in the far right to actually create these residual plots to see how well it's going to compare the predicted versus the actual. And if you scroll down a little bit further, Bob, to 532, we could see here, if you go to that scatter plot in orange and say, all right, let's actually, create a scatter plot of the actual versus the predicted, you'll get something like this. And again, if it were exactly in a 45-degree angle, it would be perfect. But you can see it's a little bit high on the low end. It's a little bit low on the high end of the predicted values. And if you scroll down a little bit further to 533, you'll see that it's actually following a little bit of a third order polynomial best fit. You could see that the red line is really the perfect fit for the predicted values, and you could see where it matches best the actual values and where it doesn't, and where it's a little bit on the high end or the low end. So these plots are usually very telling. And again, what we're doing here is this is for regression. We don't have the opportunity when we're doing, a classification model, let's say disease, yes or no, a customer credit card fraud, yes or no, or any kind of yes or no answer. You can't quite do these style of residual plots. There's other ones that we have to do. So if you go down a little bit further, Bob, you covered the explain module, right?
Rank, let's see, the next one, yeah, is rank.
Yeah. So let's talk about the rank widget. We've talked about the rank widget several times in our workshops. And if you scroll down, Bob, to 5.3435, you'll see one of the actual workflows we could do were that you put data in, and then you want to compare a rank of all of these different algorithms to see exactly how are they ranking the variable importance of your data. So which predictors are really important and which ones are not. And if you scroll down a little bit further, Bob, to 536, you could see an example of what the rank widget would show you if we're comparing, in this case, 6 different algorithms. And you could actually look at them and compare them. And if you say to yourself, well, which one am I supposed to believe? Well, what you do there is when you go into the test and score widget, you'll see which algorithm is actually the most accurate. And that's the one you should then be looking at and comparing and starting to believe. And so that's what's important about the rank widget. You could plug it in at different points in the analysis. You could plug it in right after the algorithm to see how the algorithm ranks the variables. And you could also plug it in at the very beginning of the data to see, using a variety of different information gain methods of how that ranks the variables, because that's very important to know it from the very beginning. It might lead you to believe that, if you only find that you only have one really good predictor and all the other ones are pretty weak, you might want to then go backwards in your whole analysis and say, all right, what variables am I missing in my data? What did I miss? Is it really just one example, one feature, one predictor that really dominates everything? Or did I really miss features, data that I didn't collect? Or did I maybe not do any feature engineering? And what's feature engineering? That's where you're going to take, some of your data columns that you have, and you might do mathematical sums or divisions, make a relationship between the two of them to create, other calculated features in your data. And we call that feature engineering. So what's feature engineering? It's mathematically adding additional features and columns to your data that you could use in the analysis part. So when you scroll down a little bit further, Bob, did you talk about the feature importance widget?
Yes,
Okay,
yes. So going through mine, in other words, you have as next, see,
the JAS, go to 5.6, the JAS model evaluation.
yeah.
So what's interesting now is when you look at what JASP can do for you is JASP actually has, it has predictive modeling just like Orange. The problem is that it uses R. And you could never compare multiple algorithms at the same time. You'd have to do them individually. When I showed you the workflow of 160 different algorithms in Orange, I'm going to actually be able to go in the test and score widget and be able to go there and look at how each one of them compares against each other. And let's say if F1 or R scored on a regression model is my most important feature, I could rank it and then see which algorithm did the best. So I can't do that in JASP, but JASP has all kinds of other very interesting things that we supplement because they do a few things that Orange doesn't do. Orange is very big on predictive analytics for numerical tabular data, the text analysis, for the computer vision, for image analytics. But if you want to get into hypothesis testing, you'll find that Orange is a little bit weak. They like to focus more on predictive analytics. And that's where, if you go down, Bob, to 5.7, where we talk about hypothesis testing, and we've talked about this section earlier, and all the individual types of hypothesis testing that are available. And they're available in JASP, which is free open source, and also Blue Sky Statistics, which is also free open source. So why in the world would we mix hypothesis testing, classic statistics with predictive analytics? Well, if you look at that, really traditional statistics are looking in a rear view mirror. Well, that doesn't mean it's bad, but they tell you very well where you've been and what the past situations have looked like. And hypothesis testing is very useful. If you look at a lot of medical journals, it's probably hard to find one that doesn't have a hypothesis test p-value in it. And so p-values are going to always tell you if it's below 0.05 on any hypothesis test, it's going to tell you that the sameness rule is out the window, that, the two groups you're looking at are not the same. Let's say, does gender have anything to do with any kind of disease or anything else we're interested in? If the p-value is below 0.05, then we say, yeah, it actually does make a difference. So, and there's all kinds of simple and specialized hypothesis tests. And if you scroll down a little bit, Bob, we show a few of them, especially if you scroll down to figure 5.49. These are a lot of the hypothesis tests that JASP will do for us. And the beauty of JASP, again, is probably the simplest software in the world to use. And Bob, if you scroll down one more, figure 5.50, you can see all the different types of hypothesis tests that are available in Blue Sky Statistics, which is also no code data science, free software. So if you really need, when you're doing some pre-data analysis, exploratory data analysis, and you're interested very heavily on, p-values and other very specific types of hypothesis testing, JASP and Blue Sky pretty much have us covered there. And if you scroll down a little bit lower, Bob, below there, we show a lot of the different types of commands of how to go into Blue Sky, how to go into JASP, and do a whole bunch of different types of hypothesis testing. So I'm going to stop there in that section. And Bob, you're going to pick it up on talking about concept drift, model drift.
Yeah, and Dave, I'm going to go ahead and stop the share because I can summarize that quickly. But I thought that on purpose, we might want to stop early and just use this time to answer questions, concerns, comments about the
Sure.
field, anything, kind of just open it wide open, if we will, so that the whole last thing about model drift is, let's see. All right, so we're back hopefully to a normal screen. So the model drift is just divided into concept drift and data drift. Concept drift is if there's a change in the relationship between your predictors and the outcome for whatever reason, that would be concept drift, whereas data drift is some change actually in the data itself. And again, we covered that in section 4.7. So I don't think that's all that important at this point. Let me see, I think there's one comment or whatever. There's a question by Cass about, do you recommend running frequentist, Bayesian, or both during hypothesis testing? And understand that JAS does both. Dave, can you answer that question?
You know, it all depends what theory camp you're in. If you're looking at trying to understand probabilities or classic statistics, I wouldn't say one is better than the other. I think it's always good to experiment because we have in Orange, we have also the naive Bayes algorithm. And so we could plug that in and compare that to other types of algorithms. There are a lot of people that prefer the probability logic compared to the so-called frequentist logic that is non-Bayes. And non-Bayes, typically the problem with non-Bayes type of logic is that it's going to give a lot of priority to those classes and those data sets that have and those features that have the most data. So it's going to kind of play a democratic game of, you know, the more data you have, it's going to give an advantage for that data set or for that feature. Whereby the Bayes it tries to stick to a more probability type of view of the world. So I think using both of them is very good in conjunction with each other. And unfortunately, it's one of those situations like everything else in the world of data science, where the true answer is it depends on your data set, your goals. And again, you want to experiment as much as possible, comparing Bayes and with non-Bayes. And what's interesting about Bayes is you're going to get some very interesting insights. And like, for example, there's certain graphs that you can only plug into when you're using the Bayes algorithms. For example, like the nomograms, which are incredibly intuitive to understand probability types of graphics. And we've covered them some time ago also. So is one better than the other? No, I would use them both and then try to supplement the knowledge between the two of them and see what additional insights it's going to give you for whatever data set you're looking at.
Dave, let me ask you a sort of a related question. There was a pretty widely publicized article, probably 2 to 3 years ago, about comparing logistic regression with all the newer algorithms, and the whole take-home point was the logistic regression did as well. I need to go back and look at that article because we need to also try to differentiate the strong points. Logistic regression does seem to do well with really clean data sets that are truly linear without many abnormalities, in other words. But you want to make comments about how you consider logistic regression, which is certainly an old statistical algorithm, if you will, versus the new ones like XGBoost as an example.
Yes. Logistic regression can be underestimated. If you're looking at it purely from a statistical perspective, and what are, depending on the software that you're using for logistic regressions, non-predictive, sometimes it doesn't have many options. But if you look in orange, when you click on the logistic regression widget, the first thing you're going to see is that you have some options. You could either use, you know, the L1 regularization for ridge regression. You could use the L2 for lasso, or you could use the elastic net. And then you could range the regularization level from very low to very high at very small increments. So those people that maybe discount logistic regression, I would hypothesize that they're really not experimenting. And again, I'm saying this from a predictive standpoint. They're not experimenting with all of the options. When you look at, for example, some of those workflows I showed you with, 120, 165 different algorithms, there's quite a few different settings that I have in there for the logistic regression to not only explore the differences of the different types between ridge and lasso as an example, but also using different what's called hyperparameter settings for the different values of regularization. So for me, I wouldn't discount anything until it's fully tested in a full-blown experiment, testing all of its options. And that's how I would approach any algorithm, because sometimes there is some bias, or somebody says, well, what has that algorithm done for me lately? Not much, so I'm just going to ignore it when I go into a new data set. That would not be the best way of looking at it. Or I'm going to say, well, this algorithm is a much newer algorithm that's just been developed in the last 2 years. I'm going to just focus on that. That would be not very correct either, because you never know what twists and turns are going to be in that data set. That algorithm, depending on which algorithm you pick, it can maybe do a much better job than the other ones. And you never know that in advance. And it gets all back to the first speech that I held about, the no free lunch theorem. And if you have your favorite set of algorithms, and that's how you approach the whole world of predictive analytics, you're going to miss a lot. You need to test everything, and with as many of different options of those algorithms as possible before you discount it as an old-fashioned logistic regression model that was developed in theory at the beginning of the 1900s. And why in the world would I stick with that? Well, it just had a lot of upgrades along the way too. With adding, the L1, the L2 regularization, and then the whole regularization options that we have in orange. So I wouldn't discount anything. Is my short answer to that question, Bob.
Okay, Dave, I appreciate that, because I think I've learned from you that the data science experiment is so important that try not to generalize. I mean, you can attempt it, but basically because of no free lunch, you have to test so many different parameters. You have to be careful generalizing, because it all depends on, that classic statement, it depends. So thank you for that. Now, we have a question, though, from Shingarai that says, for the sample size determinations, I usually use proportions and means, but I see Blue Sky has more options, and just sort of says, what criteria do you apply, and what do you choose, in other words, to when you look at sample size? Does Blue Sky offer something unique?
Well, when you're looking at sample size, you're very often interested in, classic statistics of what's the power of my prediction. And so what you're going to find when you go to Blue Sky, when you go under sample size, is you're gonna get a lot of power calculations that are going to tell you that, you have to make some decisions when you go into that, when you're doing sample size. The first thing, you can't just go into sample size and say, give me an answer. How many samples do I need for this data set? It's going to come back and ask you questions before it could give you an answer. It's going to first of all say, all right, how much data do you have, or can you collect? Now, that's easy. But then it's going to come back with a trick question. It's going to say, how accurate do you want your predictions to be? And you say, I don't know, I never thought of that. Well, if you can't answer that, it can't really continue on with following that thread of giving you a power calculation of how much you could actually trust your analysis based on just sample size. So it's not just a sample size calculation. It's also including, like I said, how accurate do you want to be, and then it'll give you some very interesting feedback. But again, keep in mind that's from a purely statistical perspective that really does not always apply to predictive analytics, because if I put in a terribly performing algorithm, I'm going to get an incredibly bad performance, or relative kind of to like a power in a statistical model. And if I put in a high performing one, then I'm going to get, a totally different, value of the prediction. So the value of sample size and those types of calculations don't help too much in the world of predictive analytics, because you could get lucky, and again, if you experiment with enough different algorithms, even with a small data file, you might be able to squeeze out a lot of accuracy with that if you tune the model, you tune the performance, and it could get around a lot of the normal classic roadblocks that you would encounter in normal statistics that would give you like a lower power value for that. So I hope that helped a little bit and not confused, but yeah, those type of sample size calculations are really more, they're more attuned to the world of traditional statistics and not necessarily predictive statistics.
Well, and the other thing, let me comment, based on this being brought up before, was we checked with what would happen with using synthetic data to supplement a small data set. In other words, you got a data set of 200 people. Would making it increase to 2,000 with synthetic data mean that the model would perform better? We thought it might, but the answer was it almost never did. Now that's synthetic data, that's not real data. But just to answer that question, it did not make the model perform better. Are there other questions as we, attempt to wrap up? Questions about, the field itself, data science, or AI? I mean, AI is the one that's moving so rapidly, none of us can really keep up. It's literally day to day as far as I can see. I mean, we did very much appreciate the consistency of some of you all from attending. You've been very faithful and, been excellent in being here as many months as possible and asking great questions. We hope the book chapters have been helpful and the present live presentations have been helpful. I do see a fair number of visits to the YouTube channel to look at past recordings. But any other questions or concern you want to address? I mean, you're always free to, of course, to email either one of us or both of us. I mean, if not, we're really pretty well at the end of the session. Again, it's a sad farewell for us to say goodbye, although I think we're just simply opening a new chapter and shifting gears, if you will. So we wish each and every one of you all the best in your data science career, be it just dabbling or taking it extremely seriously. So it's been a pleasure, and we hope that you will consider the certification course. And also, of course, we always put a plug in for the ABAIM courses, for the Medical Intelligence Society, and office hours, all three. So again, thank you very much, and we hope that we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.